Hi everyone, this story is called Mr. Brown's Fantastic Hat and it's written by Ayano Imai. Mr. Brown's Fantastic Hat. Mr. Brown lived alone. People were frightened of him and stayed away. Mr. Brown had no friends and he didn't want any. He had a smart hat he would wear when he went out for long walks. He told himself life was perfect without anybody fussing over him. But secretly, Mr. Brown was very lonely. One day, while Mr. Brown was sleeping, a woodpecker flew down and started tapping a hole in his hat, thinking, what a wonderful nest this hat would make. When Mr. Brown woke up and saw what had happened, he was shocked. He didn't like anybody coming near him, but that was only the start. The woodpecker soon told all his friends about the wonderful new home and invited them all to join them. Then the woodpecker pecked more holes in the hat. No, stop it at once, shouted Mr. Brown. But Mr. Brown couldn't stop the birds from coming. Then, to his amazement, something magical happened. As more and more birds arrived, the hat grew taller and taller. At first, Mr. Brown had no idea what to do, but slowly he started to enjoy the birds singing, as well as their company. His life certainly was not dull anymore. Now Mr. Brown loved to show off his hat. Everywhere he went, it was full of the music of singing birds. Other people thought this was a wonderful idea, and they started to copy Mr. Brown. Soon everyone began to wear very tall hats. But the birds preferred to stay with Mr. Brown, no matter how hard people tried to persuade them. Sometimes they all went down to the beach, and Mr. Brown would look out over the sea as they flew above him. One cold autumn morning, Mr. Brown woke to take food out to the birds, only to find they had all flown away. He felt very sad. Why would they leave him? Would he ever see his friends again? Maybe his life would be quiet once more. But he missed his new friends. I don't care where they've gone. Really, I don't, Mr. Brown said to himself as he prepared some food for them, just in case. I'm not at all worried about them, he said, looking out his window each day. But even Mr. Brown couldn't convince himself that was true. The days became shorter and colder. It was time to hibernate for the winter, but Mr. Brown tried hard to remain awake. Who would look after the birds? Who would look after the birds if they returned? Eventually, his eyelids closed and he fell into a deep, deep sleep. Snow fell gently and everything was quiet. But if you listened very carefully, you could hear Mr. Brown snoring. Outside, all was quiet and everything was covered in a blanket of snow. One morning, Mr. Brown woke up to the sound of knocking. He had been dreaming of the birds and felt he could still hear them singing. The knocking seemed to be coming from outside. He opened the door, and what did he see? It was spring, and there was a woodpecker again. While Mr. Brown was sleeping, his hat had grown roots and become a tall tree with branches and fresh new leaves. The birds had spent the winter in warmer lands and had now returned to their home. Mr. Brown was so happy to see his friends. At last he could admit this was better than being alone. And that's the end of the story. Hope you enjoyed it. Bye!